start a series on male postpartum depression, next on the Metal Pulpit. Hey, thanks for joining me for another Metal Pulpit, and what an interesting topic, isn't it? I blogged about this, back in February of this year, and the topic is strictly male postpartum depression. Now, I think you can also tie in depression in general with this one, but it's interesting because we don't always equate postpartum depression with men, usually with women. Why? Because, well, quite honestly, they're the ones that are going through everything and giving birth to this child. My story is a little different. My wife's story is a little different. You see, in 2008, my wife and I were married for 6 years at that point. No kids. We were told we couldn't have kids, and so my wife began to pray and ask God that if adoption is meant to be, it would have to fall into our lap. Mainly mine, because I was at the point, if we can't have kids, I don't want adopt or anything like that. Well, it was shortly thereafter that I received a message on Facebook from a young lady that I knew from Bible camps and stuff. She was quite a bit younger than me. But her message was basically, I'm 19 years old, going through divorce. I have a 9-month-old. Would you be willing to adopt him? Because I cannot give him the life that he wants, that I want for him. By the way, if you adopt him, then 4 months later, his biological sister will be born and she will be yours as well. Quite honestly, when I got that message, I told my wife about it because it was Facebook message to me, which was my language, is my language. And quite honestly, it made me think a little bit. My wife goes, so what do you think about this? And I said, quite honestly, if I was to preach a message on this, I would say there's your confirmation. So I guess this is something we have to do. So we met with the mom, and 2 weeks later, we decided to say yes, and went through all the loops at the local social services, because in Wisconsin, you have to foster care for 6 months before you can finally adopt. And so we did that. We decided to say yes, and within 2 weeks, my son just came to live with us at 9 months old, and he was dropped off at our door with a bunch of Tupperware totes and him, the day of a Christmas party on my wife's side of the family. So here we are. We have a son, and 4 months later, his sister was born. This can really throw a person for a loop. See, for 6 years, we went from a family of with no kids, and then we went from a family of 2 to 4 in 4 months. This is quite the thing. You see, we were part of a junior government group called the JCs here in our city, and a pastor family from our community was going through adoption as well. The only thing is that they were adopting a baby from the Philippines, and we were adopting 2 babies from a city only an hour away. And I distinctly remember them talking about this other family, saying we have to do something to raise funds for this family that's adopting this Filipino baby. And that's when I started getting a crash course on how adoption is taken care of. You see, with adoption, you don't have the luxury of paying off medical bills. Our total adoption fee was about $18,000 for the 2 of them, and they wanted it now. There was no time frame from the hospital or medical facilities to pay it off. They wanted it now. And so they were helping out this Filipino couple, and we sat at the table. We were part of this group. We said, just so you know, we're going through adoption as well, and we're happy to help out this other couple however, but if you want to help them. And I was interrupted, and the president of this JC group said, don't worry, we're not even considering you. It was at that point I started to get hard-hearted a little bit. I started to work through things and realize this is going to be different. You see, we went from this family of 2 to 4 in 4 months, and I'm thankful that my wife, for our daughter, was able to take some family medical leave and take 12 weeks off of work. But soon after, when she returned to work, that's when I began to deal with some very real things. I couldn't figure it out. I was in a slump. I was going through a depression. I didn't want to label it depression. I didn't want to go through those words, use those words, because quite honestly, I was brought up in a way that you have to say, I'm too blessed to be depressed. That's no good. We're going to talk about that more in weeks to come. But I was going through depression. I was going through some very difficult, dark times that I have never, ever navigated before. And I went through some hurdles prior to all of this. Nobody asked me how I was doing. Nobody. My wife, she got to go back to work, and there I was. My office is at home, and I'm taking care of these 2 kids that are completely new to me. 2 kids, a 13-month and a newborn, that are in diapers, and here I am wondering what is going on. No pastor asked me, how are you doing? No friend asked me how I'm doing. Nobody from my congregation asked me how is my mental well-being. Instead, I began to navigate this dark path. And I started to hold it in until one day my social worker for the kids said, Bob, how are you doing? I said, okay, I'm doing all right. She looks at me and she goes, Bob, how are you doing? I think she saw something in me that scared her a little bit, because we were finalizing adoption. I said, quite honestly, I am wondering what in the world I got myself into. This is probably something no different than a new dad experiences, where the wife can give birth naturally, or a mom dealing with things. But I wasn't myself. I was heading towards a dark place. She goes, here's the thing that I want you to keep in mind. What you're going through is very natural. What you're going through as a dad, supernatural. It's all right. Not supernatural, but it's supernatural that you are going through this sort of thing. And so she said, what you're dealing with right now is that you're mourning the loss of your freedom. Let's save this for part 2 on male postpartum depression. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me right here, pastorbobadams@gmail.com. And I look forward to chatting with you next week. Have a great week.